Good evening. Thank you all that are present. There's about 10 people present for the community outreach meeting of Uma Flowers and the community of Lunenburg. It's September 28th, 2021. It's 7 p.m. and we are here at the Lunenburg Town Hall for this meeting. To begin, I would like everyone to join me by standing and addressing the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. As I said, we're here at the Lunenburg Town Hall. This is a live meeting. The meeting is also being conducted on Zoom, as was allowed by the Governor's Council during the COVID-19 pandemic. This meeting is referred to as the Community Outreach Meeting, and it's required of any business that wishes to establish a marijuana storefront in a community. I am Tim Murphy. I'll be moderating the meeting, and this meeting is being recorded for any future reference that anyone wants to watch. When voters approved the adult recreational use of marijuana in November of 2016, the legislature created the Cannabis Control Commission, which in turn promulgated rules for businesses wishing to sell to the public. Uma Flowers, LLC, desires to operate such a business at 43 Summer Street, which is now the site of Donnelly's Tavern. If it's approved, there would be sales of medical and recreational use marijuana. First, we're going to hear from Uma Flowers. The residents here will then have a chance to ask questions. Please come up to the microphones if you wish to speak. This microphone right up here in front of me. If you're Zooming, you can raise your hand. I understand that's under the reactions column on your Zoom if you've not done that before. If you are on video and that's not working for you, wave frantically somehow, and Heather will notice and we'll make sure you get a chance to speak. The town manager will make sure that I notice everybody, I hope, that wishes to speak today, especially those people that are on the Zoom. If you are Zooming, please make note that we can't have any background noise, so mute yourself until you're called upon or ready to speak. So at this time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Uma Flowers.
Thank you very much to the moderator and to the town manager for helping to facilitate this meeting. We truly appreciate your time tonight. And for everyone else who's joined, whether virtually or in person, we're eager to have this presentation and looking forward to answering all of your questions. So as part of the materials, we've created a slide deck. And I'll briefly run through it, but what I'm not going to do is read slides to the public. The deck is available on our website. It's been posted. Anybody can have it and we can discuss it. I see some people brought it printed out and we're happy to discuss it, but I don't want to bore you miserably by reading it. There are some fundamental things that we do have to talk about pursuant to the rules for community outreach meetings, and I'll make sure to hit each one of those topics as well. My name is Valerio Romano. I'm an attorney with VGR Law Firm, and I represent Uma Flowers. So with me this evening, we have the Uma Flowers team. Uma is actually a fairly successful, although we're not quite open yet, but that still means we're successful in Massachusetts. We are hopefully on the next agenda at the Cannabis Control Commission for a final license in Pepperell, Massachusetts for adult use retail. We have a provisional license for cultivation in Athol. And it's product manufacturing as well. So hopefully one day before too long, we'll be completely vertically integrated, meaning that Uma will cultivate, produce, infuse products, and dispense them both for medical and adult use throughout Massachusetts. We're also seeking a third license in Waltham. So with me, I have the Uma team, and it's quite an impressive group. And what I'll do is with each slide, I'll allow them to introduce themselves and speak briefly about themselves. So Priyanka, would you like to start?
Yeah, thank you, Valerio. Good evening, everyone. My name is Priyanka. I'm one of the co-founders of Uma Flowers. A little bit about myself. I grew up in Waltham, Massachusetts. I went to Northeastern University for pharmacy school, so I'm a pharmacist. I've worked in a retail setting, in a pharmacy retail setting for over 10 years. But I had always envisioned owning my own business. I do come from a family of small business owners and operators throughout the New England area. So I started doing research when cannabis became legalized in Massachusetts to open my own dispensary. I thought I can use a lot of the skills that I've gained as working as a pharmacist and apply those skills in operating my own dispensary. So that's pretty much how Uma Flowers came to be, and I approached this idea with my co-founder, Tejal. We'll let her introduce herself.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Tejal Patel. So I have my master's in public health. I'm originally from Maryland. I am Priyanka's sister-in-law, so we have a family connection. So Priyanka, after I got my master's in public health, I worked for a nonprofit organization in Washington, D.C., where we worked on ways to improve the quality of healthcare for patients by working with physicians on how they can improve the care they give to their patients. So I did that for about 4 years, and then I married Priyanka's brother, and I moved up to Massachusetts, and that's right around the time when Priyanka had this idea of opening up a cannabis dispensary, and so she presented me the idea. She told me that this would be something unique that we can bring to the table, being women, minority, and having science backgrounds. We felt that this would just be something unique for us and for the cannabis industry. So we're doing a lot of bit of research, actually. We got into looking for a location, and PEPPERELL is going to be our first dispensary opening, hopefully by the end of October. So some of the things, as I just mentioned, that we pride ourselves in is that we're women and minority, and we're hoping to be really a part of the communities that we're approaching. A lot of time, what's happening right now is a lot of the larger chain marijuana companies are coming from the west to the east, trying to open up their chain shops, and that's not what we're about. We want to be a part of the community and really work with the town to make sure this can be as smooth as possible for everybody. So that's something we pride ourselves in as well. So thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight.
Yeah, I can talk a bit more about me. So my name is Yash Patel, and another name on the slide is Davis Patel. We both are physicians. I'm a cardiologist. Priyanka is my wife. Tejal is Davis's wife. So, it's a family-funded project. We all come from a healthcare-focused standpoint. Talking about me, as I said, I'm a practicing physician. Been practicing for quite some time now. I have about 10 plus more years of experience in terms of treating patients with chronic pain, various psychiatric issues, anxiety, depression, PTSD. And what truly sets us, the team, apart here is, coming from a science and a healthcare focused background, we truly do understand what this product is about, and talking about the opioid addiction out there. The one thing that what we have done in terms of physicians are give patients and people the opioids, and it has become an epidemic. So we truly believe in this product, and it might be a segue for people to try away from those products. So the part of the job for us in terms of the healthcare is to bring the educational materials to the people and the community, and just talk about what is this product about, educate them. There is still a lot of taboo that is associated with this. So that's the goal of this company here.
Thanks, Yash. So you'll see in the next, are we moving through the slides? Okay, great. So we'll see, I'm not going to read this slide, it just goes further over. So next slide, please. So you'll see what we have here is what the adult use dispensary in PEPPERELL actually looks like. And you could see that, it's almost like an Apple store. I mean, it's beautiful interior and exterior to the extent that they have control over the exterior of that portion of the building. A simple Google search for, architecture, marijuana dispensaries, or interior design marijuana dispensaries shows you what these things bring to the community. So this is actually what it looks like in PEPPERELL. Then we have some renderings of what we hope it will look like in Waltham if we're allowed to open there. Next slide, please. So we also have our site plan for our cultivation center in Athol, just to show you what we're working on. Then, next slide again. This was something that was suggested to us by the Board of Selectmen at the last hearing, was to put together a conceptual plan as to what it will look like with parking, with the building. And so we've done that, and we've presented a slide. You can see that if anybody knows the location too, there's a lot of parking there. We feel like we'll be able to satisfy the special permit process via the planning board, the special permit granting authority in Lunenburg with the amount of parking we have. We've provided a traffic study, but some of that will be updated during the special permit process once we get to that, if we are fortunate enough to be selected for a host community agreement. Next slide, please. So compliance with zoning. This had sort of been an issue. Lunenburg requires 500 feet from K through 12. But in addition, actually, Lunenburg's zoning bylaw is more protective to the community and more restrictive than the rules from the Cannabis Control Commission. Because in addition, there's a setback requirement, excuse me, my notes on my phone here. In addition, there's a setback requirement for 250 feet from pre-existing residential uses and residential zoning districts, pre-existing family child care providers licensed by the Commonwealth, municipal active recreational facilities, houses of worship, and funeral homes. And that doesn't actually exist in the state rules. It's actually an extra bit of protection that the Lunenburg zoning bylaw affords to its residents. Next slide, please. So this is what I was just talking about. 43 Summer Street does not offend any of the zoning provisions. Next slide, please. So this is, again, more detail on the setback provisions, which we've now finally had a survey done by a licensed engineer. We do not offend any of the setback requirements. Next slide, please. So we have some rough numbers for traffic generation. TEP LLC is our licensed traffic engineer that's provided some of this. As I said, during special permit, we will refine these numbers probably further and make sure that we have a full traffic study that we provide to the planning board, the special permit granting authority. But this gives you some ideas. There really isn't a significant impact on area traffic operations. We feel that there's it's a very main street there. There's no sort of back roads that we're on, and so the amount of extra traffic per hour is pretty much negligible at that location. Next slide. And you could see the actual quantifiable metrics of what that traffic is. And throughout a whole weekday, it's an extra 1,000 or so vehicle trips through the whole day. And we certainly have plenty of parking to accommodate that. And that's both direction, that's in and out. So it's not an extra 1,000 vehicles, it's an extra 1,000 trips. So it's about 500 in, 500 out. Then Saturday daily, 1102 is what the projection is. And so this has been provided by our traffic engineer. I'm happy to answer questions about it, and all the information is here on the slide. So compliance with local permitting. The next slide, please. Compliance with local permitting. Pursuant to Lunenburg zoning bylaw, we need a special permit from the planning board. And so whatever the process is that the town feels is appropriate, typically what happens is, and it's not every town, but typically what happens is you'll be awarded a host community agreement, which is really just an authorization to keep applying, right? It's not a license, it's not a permit. It's like, hey, keep applying with the state and local level. And so if we're awarded a host community agreement, depending on what process the town wants, we would then put together a special permit application, which is, engineered, stamped plans, traffic analysis, which we've done a significant portion of, but it'll be a more detailed and thorough traffic study, and all the other special permit requirements. Special permit is really the way the planning board, as a special permit granting authority for this use in Lunenburg, it's really the way that the planning board protects the community and makes sure that our proposed use fits with the health and safety of the community. And that, is parking, traffic. It's really not as much of an interior analysis as the different exterior analysis. And then, so if we're awarded a host, next slide, please. Yep, we got it. Thank you. If we're awarded a host community agreement, basically what you need to apply at the Cannabis Control Commission at the state level is a host community agreement and a binding agreement on the property. So we have a binding agreement on the property. We've been working with the Donnellys for some months now to move this project along, and we're looking forward to the host community agreement if Lunenburg does decide to award us one. We can then apply at the Cannabis Control Commission. Now, the Cannabis Control Commission has put in extensive security measures for these businesses, very, very thorough. But we will continue to work with the Lunenburg Police Department as well to make sure that our security is top-notch. But basically what happens is a patient or an adult outside the building will show an ID, whether it's through a camera or depending on snow and how cold it is, they may be let right into the first room of the dispensary, which is it's sort of a man trap or a sally port. You can't get past that room without being buzzed into the rest of the building. In that room, there's an ID check, and they will make sure that you're either 21 or you're a patient or you're a caregiver, awarded a card by the state before you can come in the building. If you check out, and the person who's checking IDs will also be trained to make sure that whoever's coming, our customer or patient, isn't under the influence of any other substances. They're not drunk, they're not stoned, to the extent that we can tell, right? We're going to absolutely train that person to tell. Then they'll be allowed into the rest of the dispensary. Inside the rest of the dispensary, it's the way UMA's doing it. There'll be a larger area where people will be. There'll be a dispensary agent who will talk to them about what their orders are. And there'll be tablets available, depending on exactly how we roll it out in Lunenburg. They will also have the menu, and the menu will be depicted on the walls via large televisions also. You'll be able to place your order at that point. And then when you check out, you have to show your ID for a second or a third time, depending on the weather and whether you've shown it outside. So that's 3 times where you've had to show your ID to buy cannabis. From the dispensary here. And so very different from some package stores that are frequently, in air of not carding people sufficiently. And then you'll get actually, what's funny, it's like I've been to Board of Selectmen meetings where that package store or a bar may actually have a problem with an ID, and they'll get a slap on the wrist. They'll have a 2-day ban of their liquor license or something. And then they'll contest that with the ABCC, and they might not even wind up with anything. If UMA doesn't card somebody and sells them cannabis, which is it's virtually impossible given the level of control and requirements that have to let somebody in and out of the shop. But if they did that, they would have their license yanked. And all this time and money that we've spent, there'd be no second chances. That's not something that happens in Massachusetts. So it's very strict that it's only going to patients and adults 21 and over. Next slide, please. We can go to the next one. One more. So preventing diversion of minors, this is obviously incredibly important. We don't want our cannabis to wind up in the hands of minors. And this was actually part of the goal. So I'm a co-author of Question 4 from 2016, the ballot initiative. And when we sat down and we wrote this thing, Marijuana Policy Project came to Massachusetts, and they found some of us who are stakeholders who've been licensing and citing the medical ones, because at that point we had medical. And they said, hey, do you want to get together and help us write the ballot initiative? And there were about 12 of us, and I was fortunate enough to be part of that. And one of the things that the goal of this industry is to end the unregulated market, people call black market or illegal market, and the unregulated market. And unfortunately, without getting too detailed, the tax rate on this stuff makes it so that the unregulated market never goes away entirely, but hopefully we get there. But it's also to keep cannabis out of the hands of minors. So if you go to a high school, I'm raising 3 boys in Massachusetts, it's easier to get cannabis for the most part than it is to get alcohol at high schools. That's because alcohol has long been a very regulated substance, but cannabis is sort of everywhere. So the goal of the regulation is to make sure people start taking it seriously, to take cannabis out of the hands of drug dealers who would also sell other substances, and make sure that it's a regulated market. And I think more and more of that's happening, and more people are going to dispensaries as opposed to just buying weed from their cousin that they've been getting with for 20 years. So. And so part of that, we're going to card people, like I said, but we're also going to make sure that cannabis, if an UMA Flowers package is in the hands of a minor, we're going to work closely with law enforcement. It's all going to be barcoded. We'll be able to tell who bought it, when they bought it. We'll be able to track that down. We'll report that to local law enforcement. We'll absolutely cooperate to make sure that UMA Flowers packages are staying with who they're meant to stay with. Of course, we can't prevent entirely people giving cannabis to each other in the Commonwealth, but we hope via also our educational materials that we're required to provide to our customers, that they understand the importance of locking up their cannabis and not giving it to their kids and not allowing it to have access to their kids. It's sort of like alcohol or prescription drugs, painkillers, all that sort of thing. It's up to adults also to keep their prescription medications out of the hands of their kids, and cannabis is no different. But unlike other places, we're required to provide those educational materials to our customers, or at least make it available. And particularly first-time customers, we want to make sure that they have an ability, they have the opportunity to review that stuff. We'll email it. It's going to be in different languages. We'll have it printed at the site, at the location. So there's, a big effort to prevent diversion to minors. Now, this next slide about nuisance. So nuisance for one of these cannabis businesses is typically the smell. That's typically what people think of as when they think of nuisance. The smell is more of an issue at cultivation facilities, because that's when you have big flower, big grows, and particularly, around harvest time, it smells a lot. There is some significant engineering now that's, can keep that smell from escaping the building, but it's really far less of an issue for a retailer where the cannabis typically just shows up pre-packaged. There might be some rare times where we might have to repackage, an ounce or something, but for the most part, cannabis shows up pre-packaged, and the smell issue is not a nuisance. There'll be no loud music, there'll be no bright lit up signs after dark. We're gonna have sufficient room. It's a great building for this, where customers will queue up inside. There won't be long lines. People sort of have this image of Leicester and Northampton from right when this industry opened in Massachusetts, and these long lines. That's when there was all this hype about it. Now there's over 100 retailers in Massachusetts. It's just not like that anymore. It would be great for Lunenburg and for UMA if it was, because that would be more revenue, which we'll talk about in a moment. But it's really just not like that, where you have these people queuing up outside and gross traffic issues and parking lots completely full. It's just, there's one Netta in Brookline, which is sort of the, people sort of think of as the gold standard for dispensaries in Massachusetts. But they only have like 8 parking spots. We're gonna have far more than that. And that's part of why there is some sort of backup there. It's also because it's Netta, right? They've been doing this forever. We hope that we're gonna be more professional and better than they are. And this is a great team, and you can see what we're doing in Pepperell. You'll be able to come visit long before Lunenburg is open. You'll be able to come, if you're an adult, to the Pepperell location and check it out. So next slide, please. So benefits to Lunenburg. So we're going to provide access to quality, legal, independently lab-tested cannabis to patients and adults in the Commonwealth. So that's our goal, right? So that's a benefit, as opposed to, pesticide-ridden, mold-ridden, heavy metal-ridden cannabis that's, grown by a grower who doesn't have the requirement of independently lab testing all of their product. We have to do that. That's part of the rules. We have to contract with a lab, and it's a significant expense for the UMA team. We're going to renovate the building and the outside. There's an extra house on that property. We're going to tear that down. You'll see that location, although it looks great now, you'll see that location is going to be completely, sort of revitalized, and it's going to look great inside and out. So that also contributes to, we're going to hire to the extent that it's non-discriminatory and legally possible. Our host community agreement will likely have a provision that we will make every effort to use local contractors. In fact, for our security company, we have a great security company we're using elsewhere, but there's a local person here who works for American Alarm, and we've been speaking with them, and we would love to give them an opportunity to bid on the project. And assuming that, the bid isn't extraordinary, we're going to hire a local contractor for security, for instance. we're definitely going to hold a job fair and try to hire locally. We'll post in local papers that job fair and our job descriptions, and we'll make every effort to hire locally. Now, there'll be some senior management that need to have cannabis retail experience, and we will, have to hire them, likely from outside, unless somebody lives in Lunenburg who fits that goal too. And then you'll see somebody from the UMA team there all the time also. So we'll add at least 12 jobs, hopefully, a bunch more, depending on how busy it is to the community, to staff the place. And that's, management, people working the retail, people doing order processing, moving the cannabis from the vault to the retail floor. We're going to hire at least 12 people, if not more. 12 to 20 is what the slide says. And then local contractors and vendors, like I said. And then the other benefit is money to the town of Lunenburg. So what the money part means is 3% off the top via the host community agreement, and another 3% off the top via local option tax. So that's 6 points off the top back to Lunenburg. And people think there's this process of negotiating the host community agreement. We're not really negotiating much. If we get a host community agreement that's at all reasonable put in front of us, I'm sure it's going to be executed. So whatever the town of Lunenburg wants. So there are bells and whistles to the host community agreement too, right? So we talked about local hiring, local contractors. There's full transparency with law enforcement, right? So any authorized person from town government, from the police department, from the fire department, from the health department is welcome to be we actually will have to sign them in and escort them because those are the rules of the commission, but they'll be able to see our whole place. People who live in Lunenburg can obviously check it out. And so full transparency with the municipality about our operations, which sort of adds that extra level of it's not just security, but it's just sort of full transparency. We'll also have our security plans reviewed by the police department, should they wish, and hopefully sign off on them and make any edits to them that the police department thinks are appropriate. Next slide. So the next slide is various marijuana studies and research. It talks about, and I have a lot of this stuff. I can actually send any of the actual studies to anybody via PDF. But basically the idea is that unlike the common myth, cannabis businesses do not contribute to crime. In fact, crime goes down, sort of like the broken windows theory. These places are so scrutinized, and there's cameras in and out, and outward-facing cameras. Also, cannabis retailers and dispensaries don't contribute to adolescent cannabis and drug use. The data is just the opposite. Colorado is probably the most sophisticated adult use and medical state, although California had medical first. And the data from Colorado is clear that adolescent cannabis use does not go up. And then opioid mortalities. The American Medical Association has a very famous study that there's basically 25% fewer opioid mortalities per year in cannabis jurisdictions. That's the American Medical Association. I'm not talking Americans for Safe Access or NORML or proponents of the cannabis industry. This is the AMA. And there's a lot more data like that. Fewer pain pills prescribed per doctor per year in well-regulated cannabis jurisdictions. And I'm happy to share any of that data with anybody who's interested. If you give me one moment, I just want to make sure I touched on all my points and then pass it back over to the moderator. Yep. So we talked about dispensing only for adult use and medical, no product manufacturing, no cultivation, no on-site consumption, period. There's no zoning amendment that's required. We fit current zoning. We do need a special permit from the planning board. There's no local further licensing other than special permit, but we're going to work with all municipal departments to make sure that our operation is vetted and approved. No Board of Health regulation specifically, but again, we'll work with the Board of Health, and I'll help them draft one if they'd like. That's no problem at all. We already talked about the 500-foot buffer and the 250-foot buffer. I'm not going to repeat that. We'll comply with all the security requirements, state and local, 935 CMR 500 and 501 talk about security requirements for adult use and medical dispensaries. Will comply with all of them. And then in addition, anything the local Lunenburg Police Department wants us to do. Preventing diversion of minors, I talked about it, talking to customers, having patient education materials, only selling to patient and customer education materials, only selling to qualified patients and adults in the Commonwealth, and the idea of our packaging and being able to track that back to the customer, when they bought it, who bought it, et cetera. So nuisance we talked about, it's usually about smell, but in addition, we're not going to have noise, we're not going to have tons of people queuing outside, we're not going to have lights after dark, we'll have, on-site traffic and parking that's very well watched, and we'll work with the planning board and any municipal departments that wants to help us vet and execute on that plan. And then we talked about benefits to Lunenburg, which is a financial benefit, the local hiring, the full transparency with the town. As far as the host community agreement, I provided a draft to the Board of Selectmen a few weeks back, and they wanted us to have this meeting before we engage further in the discussion on that. But like I said, we'll sign anything that's reasonable and put in front of us. There's not going to be some back and forth on that. So with that, that's our presentation in chief. Does anybody from the UMA team have anything to add? No? And with that, I'll turn it back over to the moderator.
Very good. So if you wish to speak at this point in time, you can just come up to the microphone, give us your name, give us your address, and then make a comment or ask a question if you want. If anybody is on Zoom that wishes to speak or address the issue, then they can raise their hand, which is under the reactions button on your screen. And if you're on video and that's not working for you, just wave your arms frantically and we'll see that you wish to speak. So anybody wish to make a comment, ask a question? You answered everything so well, so far. How about people on Zoom? Ms. Lemieux?
There are no raised hands.
No raised hands at this point in time.
Unmuted.
All right. Anybody else have anything that they'd like? Oh, there you go. Come on up. Usually once it gets started, nobody wants to be first. There you go. And give us your name and your address, please.
Hi, my name is Matthew Brenner. I'm from 619 Northfield Road. Disclosure, I do sit on the planning board in Lunenburg, but I'm here tonight just as a citizen. And if I came in a little late, so I apologize if you already addressed this, but I'm curious, why Lunenburg?
I'll let one of you guys answer it, if you'd like.
So as we have looked into locations, we felt like we're from Massachusetts. We don't live too far away, and when we approached the town, they wanted to work with us, so we went ahead and decided to look into what we could do and bring to Uma Flowers. We can bring to Lunenburg. I'm sorry.
And also, just to kind of add on to what they just said, we're opening already in Pepperell, so this is actually pretty close to Pepperell as well, so we can share resources. The idea is to maybe have workers that can even rotate from one store to the other. So we like the fact that it's close enough, but also distant enough at the same time from Pepperell, which is our other location.
And then sort of last thing to add, we found one property at first. It did not work. We found another property working with the Donnellys. So we have a property that we believe is compliant with zoning. And then on top of that, although protective and exceeds state requirements, the Lunenburg zoning bylaw isn't so prohibitive that it would make it impossible or impracticable to do our business. So local, having another local retailer, the site, working with Lunenburg seems super viable given the bylaw.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Someone else? Told my wife I'd be home early, but I don't know. Oh, come right up.
Good evening. Lou Franco, 250 Arbor Street in Lunenburg. Also, spirit of full disclosure, I sit on the select board, but I'm here as a citizen. But I'm asking a question on behalf of the select board as a citizen. You anticipate opening in Pepperell in a month? Is that Okay.
Well, we're hoping that we will be on the agenda for the Cannabis Control Commission next month. And then after, assuming we've submitted everything, they're not waiting on anything for us. We believe everything we submitted is compliant. They usually give you an RFI or a further follow-up question if what we've given them isn't sufficient. We've given them all of our policies and procedures, security, everything. And so there's nothing that they're waiting on us. So hopefully there is a process there, but hopefully we're on the agenda next month. And then after that, there's still a few more weeks before we'll actually be open. So it's probably, realistically, it's probably closer to 2 months from today, but assuming that everything goes the way we expect, it shouldn't be any longer than that.
Okay, that's still going to be way fast, sooner than anything happens here.
Oh, a year, yeah.
So your invitation to come and check out if and when you open in Lunenburg, could members of boards in this town, once Pepperell is open, come and get a view of that and see the entirety of it?
Yes. I mean, you could come sooner if you'd like. We'd have to badge you in and out and be escorted. But yes, you're welcome to come, absolutely. In fact, we encourage it. I mean, They built something beautiful there, so I'm sure they're happy to show it off.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Of course.
Anyone else? Come right up.
Jim Marino, 916 Chase Road. I'm also on the Board of Selectmen. Can you speak more about the increased tax revenues that the town will benefit by?
Yeah, absolutely. So between the host community agreement and the local option tax, it's 6% off the top. And so if we did, $5 million in sales, which would be great, that's $300,000 to Lunenburg. Most cities and towns that I've worked with over the years don't actually put it in their budget as a dependable, renewable expense year after year. They sort of treat it as found money, and maybe they'll buy some police cruisers or, pay a salary of a substance abuse officer for the school, something like that. But that's the anticipated revenue back to the town.
So it's 6% of the gross?
6% of the gross annual.
Annual?
Yes.
And that's in the host agreement?
It's 3% via the host community agreement and 3% via a local option tax. So the host community agreement the state law only allows up to 3% via the HCA, but then there's the actual other 3% via the local option tax. And I understand that, so it's 2% by default, and I understand that Lunenburg has adopted the local option up to 3%, so it's 6 points total.
So isn't there a bill in committee right now to eliminate that clause in the host agreements throughout the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts?
No, so what's happened, so there's a few different things that are being thought of for the host community agreements. Nothing is suggesting to eliminate them. The host community agreement will be good for 5 years after we open. What there is there's a couple things. One, the Cannabis Control Commission sought, and I don't know if they have a few new commissioners, I don't know if it's still the consensus, but the Cannabis Control Commission sought the authority to review the host community agreements themselves. Because what was happening was different towns were forcing operators to pay significant more money off the top. And what that did was it created a preference for sort of large multi-state, out-of-state operators to come in. Oh, I can afford to give you $100,000 in cash right away. And that excluded, local groups. Now, UMA is capitalized enough to do this, but they don't have hundreds of thousands to throw around, right? So it excluded local operators, particularly, this women business enterprise. We're registered with the Supplier Diversity Office. And so that was one of the bills. Another one is to really enforce the 3% limit. That's my understanding of what's there. I don't believe that there's any appetite in the legislature to do away with the host community agreement requirement. It's 5 years. That's under 94G.
I understand that bill is to eliminate the 3%.
Well, then that's news to me, and I would bet my car that it wouldn't pass.
What kind of car is it?
It's an old Audi. You can see it's out front. It's got a nice fishing rack on the top.
I can see why you'd bet it then. So let's talk about statistics.
do my best.
Tell us more about, you spoke about some statistics earlier. Can you just reiterate those?
So the American Medical Association has a study that in medical marijuana jurisdictions that are well developed, it's 24.8% fewer opioid mortalities. There's another statistic that there's been lots of data pulling police reports, particularly in older places like Oakland and California, where crime doesn't go up, it in fact goes down. There's another statistic about fewer pain pills prescribed per doctor per year in developed cannabis jurisdictions. So there's just a host of these that, I don't have a spreadsheet in front of me, but I'm happy to share them with anybody who would like to see them, and yes.
Well, the truth of the matter is, when you say that crime went down, that was all as a result of the chief of police in Denver making a statement that crime went down in 2014, which happened to coincide with the legalization of marijuana in that state. But in fact, the crime rate in the United States in 2014 went down overall, according to the FBI statistics. Let's call it what it is. There's no evidence either way. Opponent, proponent, whatever, to suggest that marijuana is safe or otherwise. Am I right? I mean, I just read probably 30 articles before I came here. Not one of them was conclusive. And I'm talking about studies done by the National Institute on Drug Abuse and so on and so forth, the CDC. As a matter of fact, there was a study done by the CDC that said that opiate overdoses were on the rise in most states, but not including Colorado and Oregon. But the fact of the matter is, some states, substance abuse is regional. In other words, opiate abuse in West Virginia is probably one of the highest in the United States. However, when you start talking about other drugs like methamphetamine, meth abuse might be higher in Colorado and Washington and in Oregon, and maybe not in some of the other states that heroin is abused at a higher level. So those studies are skewed. So let's call it what it is. There is not a study anywhere that I have found so far, and I've done a lot of research prior to today, a lot, and none of them are conclusive. So what I'd prefer is that when you come here, you don't tell people that crime rates go down, that drug abuse goes down, because we don't know that. Nobody knows that. Just come here and tell them, look, we're a profit. We want to make a profit here. That's what this business is all about. Let's face it, right? We're selling marijuana for a profit. And there is a move by the legislation to eliminate the 3%. So cities and towns aren't going to benefit by this the way everybody states that they will in the future. And you watch, because the fact of the matter, I'm up here arguing not either way. But what I'm telling you is that we're not listening to all the facts. And what happened is this country was inundated with marijuana back in the early 2000s up until the legalization. So, of course, people you put a referendum in front of them after there's a higher use of marijuana, put a referendum out there, they're going to vote for it. That's just a fact. The fact is, there was a lot of drug distribution in this country. More people started using marijuana, so now you got more people voting yes on these referendums. That's why it became legal. Now, what's happened is everybody's getting used to it. Legislators are looking at it as not such a bad thing, because the populace seems to think it's okay. 55% of the voters in Lunenburg voted yes. So I'm definitely in a minority by 1%. So let's call it what it is. Come to town, tell them you're going to make a lot of money selling marijuana. There is some medical benefits to it, I'll admit that. There are some benefits to it from a medical standpoint. But please, don't come here and tell us give us false statistics, give the public out there, because a lot of them are in my camp. You know, so the point is, let's be truthful about this. It's a money business. You're here to make money. That's the bottom line, okay? And then maybe there won't be other vertical integration going on, if you know what I'm saying. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just say something?
Oh, certainly.
Sorry. I take offense when you say that we're here for money, because we're not. Okay, I really believe in this product, and I think that it helps people. So please don't stand there and tell me why I'm in this business. That's all. Thank you.
And, you know,
Sorry.
their partner, Tejal's husband, he did his residency in the Bronx, right?
Yes.
And so he saw beds filled up with people dying from opiate abuse. And I can tell you, people with a firm healthcare background, which you're sitting next to three of them, and a cardiologist, and Davis unfortunately wasn't able to be here tonight, they've seen the benefits of this. And you know, I know I'm never going to change your mind, Chief, and I've you know, been eager and happy to talk to you about it. But what America is doing right now with combating drug abuse, whether it's meth or opiates, isn't working. So we could keep, you know, butting our head against the wall, or we can try something where there actually is data, American Medical Association data, independent data, not from cannabis advocates, not from cannabis proponents, which I'm happy to share with you, that does conclude that opioid abuse goes down. It does conclude that. And so if that's one of the things that we're talking about, and I'll tell you that the people in this team believe strongly in that. You know, I always wish that Davis would be able to, would have sort of speak more at these things, particularly because of his background in the Bronx is so compelling. And so I understand the sort of the police department perspective, and I understand people don't appreciate the value that cannabis has. I mean, I'm raising three boys in Mass. I don't want them smoking weed in high school. I don't want them, you know, I totally agree, but there is some value.
Data, what I'm saying is there's data to refute what you're saying. So yeah, you're telling me the American Medical Association has data that's important. I'd like to see it.
Of course I'll share it with you.
I've probably already read it, but
of course I'll share it with you.
There's data everywhere, and it goes either way. It vacillates.
Well, so yes, sorry.
Tell me I'm not wrong. Or tell me I'm not right. Either way, I don't care. Argue with me.
Well,
but I think I am right. Based on what I've done, all the research I've done, that data vacillates. You can't sit there and say I'm wrong. I don't think you can.
One thing I can tell you is I'm never going to change your mind, but I do like engaging in the conversation. That's for sure. Lunenburg passed medical by 61%. It passed adult use by 52.5%, right? So that's about 55, what you said, you know, with a blended rate of how it was passed. So Lunenburg is what they consider a yes town in Massachusetts. And so the majority of the people here are for it. Now, that's a presidential election. The only time cannabis passes on the ballot is during presidential elections, when you get a giant turnout. At smaller local referendums, you'll get people who are typically prohibitionists of whatever it is. I mean, you sit on the Board of Selectmen, you see people who show up for meetings just to oppose no matter what it is. That's the people that get turned out. But Lunenburg is a yes town, both for medical and adult use. So we believe by bringing this business here, we're also supporting the will of the Lunenburg voters.
Well, you know, I mean, you can be offended all you want, but you're going to make a lot of money doing this. You can't deny that. And you're a pharmacist. And you know the benefits of marijuana. There are some. There's 1,000 other drugs that I'm sure can mimic the same effects as marijuana can on certain medical conditions or conditions caused by other drugs, which is typical. Somebody with cancer has to undergo treatment, become nauseous or whatever, and marijuana can help that situation. But there's a lot of other drugs that can help that situation. Am I not right?
Yeah, and all drugs come with side effects.
That's
as
right.
Well. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're treating side effects of other drugs with it's that snowball effect. But whatever.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into that. What I want to tell you is that you can be offended all you want, but you're going to make a lot of money on this. Nobody can deny that.
Yeah, but when you,
But-
oh, sorry,
Yeah.
it's okay. I'll just let it go.
There's actually, Internal Revenue Code Section 280E prohibits regular business deductions, and it actually totally limits the money that these businesses make. And so it's actually, people think of it as this sort of green rush, and everybody's going to get super rich from selling
Well-
cannabis in Lunenburg.
All right,
You'll see that.
that's all that
Yeah.
aside, okay? All
But
I'm
our-
saying is, I don't, from my experience, we deal with alcoholism. That's a serious problem in this country. It always will be. It is now. We deal with it. So now all we're doing is adding another problem. That's the way I look at it. We're just compounding a problem. Every time you legalize something, they legalized alcohol, there was prohibition, and it came back, and there's been problems ever since. And it's going to continue to go on. And all you're doing by legalizing marijuana is compounding the problem. That's the way I see it. I can't help it. It's the way I see it. Why don't we do something constructive? I made a comment to John, but we should start making microprocessors right now, because we really need them, not selling marijuana. We don't do anything anymore. We don't even, we manufacture nothing in this country. Nothing anymore.
So one of the things that Athol will be, it's akin to biotech, right? So it's an incredibly sort of complex process, super clean inside. The lab and the extraction methodology is akin to biotech. And so it actually now we are going to be, the more that cannabis becomes produced in state is more of this sort of high-tech operation, which employs a lot of people. So it is actually finally manufacturing something. And as far as the opioid thing, if you think about it like this, so let's say I break my ankle and I go to the doctor and the doctor gives me a prescription for Percocet or Vicodin. Or God forbid, OxyContin, right? Which is being more and more looked at finally. We just saw what's going on with Purdue. But instead, let's say I never start with the Percs or the Vikes or the Oxys, and my ankle's better, but now I'm kind of hooked on opiates, and I'm like, well, screw it, I'm going to try it. I'm going to go, get some heroin because I don't have any insurance, I don't have a reason, no one's prescribing it to me. I'm going to go buy some Oxys on the street. I'm going to get some, fentanyl, and that's the progression. Now, if somebody were to treat themselves with cannabis instead, they never go down that road of opiate addiction and abuse, and that's actually what happens. And there's plenty of particularly anecdotal evidence that people who use cannabis, they do it as an exit drug from opiates. And so this idea that it's just another bad substance, look, cannabis is ubiquitous anyway. I mean, it's like we're telling our kids, this is illegal, don't do it, but they have it in front of them everywhere they go. Cannabis is everywhere, right? And so instead, by taxing and regulating it, we have the opportunity to take revenue out of that, put it into substance abuse, put it into law enforcement, and we can be honest with our kids about what the truth, about what cannabis is. And by just sticking our heads in the sand and pretending like cannabis isn't there, because it's everywhere anyway, the point of this was to end the unregulated market and to tax and bring in revenue to cities and towns, and particularly in Massachusetts, which has a horrible opioid problem. Yes, we're not like some southern states, but it's terrible here. Hopefully combat that too. And that certainly was the goal in drafting the ballot initiative, which I participated in. It wasn't just for people to make a bunch of money and say, I don't care about the populace. It was actually quite the opposite. The people who sat on that committee were about social equity, restorative justice, about ending opiate abuse. These were the people we sat down together and we tried to write a law that addressed some of these things. And then the legislature came in with their wisdom and they sort of rewrote our law largely. But the goal here is certainly businesses to open up and make money. But our records, by the way, our record keeping is available to the Cannabis Control Commission, and we'll share them with you too. All our sales, we have to keep all these records. So you guys will see the money that we're actually making. You can audit the 6 points off the top to make sure you're getting that. So you guys will know exactly how much money we're making. We will share this information with you so you could see that it's not just this giant cash cow where everybody's going to be driving around in Ferraris next year because they opened a cannabis dispensary in Lunenburg. These people particularly are local and they believe in the benefits for the opioid problem in Massachusetts.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate, and I would love to speak with you anytime you want about this. And I will send you, independent peer-reviewed studies that aren't from cannabis advocates that talk about some of the issues that we've spoken about tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we finally got the video going with PAC so that people at home can actually see rather than just hear us.
On Zoom.
On Zoom, thank you. Anybody else here want to follow up after Jim? I did want to ask, when you advertised, I believe you had an email address if people had some questions. Did you get any responses from on the emails? Okay. Sort of like the people on Zoom, you know, they want to hear what's going on, they want to know what's going on, but don't have any questions just now.
But one thing on that issue is, you know, Lunenburg, when I speak to the selectmen, they've been very clear that, you know, our community engagement is important. So just because this community outreach meeting may end soon, doesn't mean that, you know, you can't email Priyanka and ask whatever questions about us siting in Lunenburg, and we'll get back to you. And that, you know, so that, absolutely.
Maybe we could share the email address, or?
It's certainly, it's on the note, the
Yeah,
updated
it's
notice.
also on the deck.
It's also on the deck.
Yep.
I can just read it if you'd like.
Yes, my
Yeah,
name.
let's read it.
umaflowers.co.
Yeah.
Read it into the record as we like to
It's
say.
Priyanka, P as in Paul, R-I-Y-A, N as in Nancy, K-A, at Uma Flowers, that's U, M as in Mary, A, flowers.co. Priyanka at umaflowers.co.
Right. Good.
Tom Alonso, 284 Lancaster Avenue, Chair of the Select Board, and I say these comments not as a Select Board member necessarily, although there's nothing I wouldn't say as a Selectman. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming and for the application, I think, and the good presentation that you gave tonight. It was very thorough, and I think by the fact that there were a few questions probably indicates that. I do want to say that in order to get to this point where the state and then the town, as a yes town, although by a slim margin obviously, did this, there has been a lot of oversight, and the whole industry, and I have no ties to the industry at all, but the whole industry has been under a huge magnifying glass. So in an attempt to not make this legalization problematic, you're probably not even under a magnifying glass, you're probably under like a huge microscope at everything you do. This meeting is evidence of that. I want people to know at home that other things that we have social problems with, like drinking, alcoholism, etc. If you want to open up a liquor store, there's you have to go to the state to get the license, but there's no hearing like this. There's no security review. There's nothing of the scrutiny that this goes through. So a few elements that strike me is that if the state, and regardless of what other states have done, but if this state has gone the medical route and then gone the recreational route that they have, put in the Cannabis Commission, put in the host community agreement, this outreach program, all the security reviews and everything, I think that it certainly satisfies my own self that this is being treated seriously and it is not just wantonly going to be one at every corner, that this takes a lot of money to go through this review. And sure, it's a business and every business wants to make money, but you know, I understand the position you're all in, and I appreciate that of everybody going through it. So I think it fits if the zoning proves fine, and then the planning board will go through, assuming that we sign the host community agreement. You'll get under more scrutiny for the whole operation. All of those safeguards are fine with me for my sake, for my own interest. And, you know, as somebody who's never tried any of the products ever, whether I went to 4 years of art school in New York City, so certainly had plenty of opportunity, but as
How did
one
it
of the very
happen?
few, I know, and people may not believe it, but it's absolutely true. So I wasn't one of those people who tried it, and therefore that's why I voted for it. I voted for it because I saw a real clampdown on something that probably shouldn't have been, after lots of reading of my own. So I appreciate you coming forward, and I can certainly appreciate your comment that it's not your intent. Sure, you obviously want to make money, otherwise you wouldn't be starting a business, but I can certainly appreciate that it's not your intent to open this because you can make a lot of money. I'm sure in your industry, there's lots of things in the medical field you could do to make a lot of money.
Yes.
Or some money, whatever. So I want to thank you all for coming, and I want to thank everybody in attendance and listening, because I think this is a real operation that takes a lot of people, and there's a lot of eyes watching it, and that alone should be secure enough. And all the reaching out to the community, the police department to review the security procedures, and to anybody who wants to see the books, us, one of my other select board members asking about touring the Pepperell.
Yes.
I mean, that would probably something we'd want to take you up on. Those all satisfy my thing that this is a safe environment, and certainly it has been proven in other places, and I know it will be here too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Anyone else before we close out? Yes, sir. I see you standing over there. Come on over.
Ray Morin, 65 Pratt Street, Lunenburg. What is going to set you guys apart different from the other ones that are in the area? The one that's on the Fitchburg-Lunenburg line on 2A. There's another one going in next to Dippin' Donuts in Fitchburg. There's one on Airport Road, which is right around the block. There's one on Route 31 in Ashby. There's probably 20 of them within a 10-mile radius. There's one in West Fitchburg at the Rotary. There's another one up by the what used to be the hotel that's now the pool place in 31. So what's going to set you guys apart from them?
So as I mentioned in my intro, something that I feel sets us apart is that we're women-owned businesses, and there's not many that I know of in the cannabis industry. So we're hoping to bring some people that are interested in meeting women in the business, as well as we really want to educate people on the product. And you saw Priyanka's emotions behind why we're about this. And I think it's really important for people to understand what it does for people. Whether you're doing it, because you want to relax or you want to relieve pain. We've met so many people in this market now that it's really changed their lives. Makes them feel they take medications that don't really help them, so they've come to try cannabis, and that's what's worked for them. But we really want to just provide safe, clean, pure products and really provide a welcoming experience for our customers and to educate the community we come to. So even if you don't want to, if you don't want to try it, but you just want to come in and, just learn about the products, we're hoping to have a team that is educated and has the knowledge to provide you information about what it is that we sell and how you can use it, and you can come in and have a private consultation is what we're hoping to do in Pepperell. So that's something we can potentially bring here. That way you can even ask questions in privacy if you're not comfortable doing that in the retail space. And so I think that's something that we really hope to do is educate people that this is not just maybe what you've heard, you've read on, or what you've heard through the news, et cetera. So.
And some of the things that it does, we've talked about other drug use and, PTSD for veterans. Using cannabis has shown incredible efficacy for that. It's, some of the most compelling testimony at the state level when this whole law was rolled out was from veterans who literally broke down crying because the lack of access to cannabis and concerns with the VA. There's a lot of ailments, both physical and mental, that cannabis certainly helps with. Without doing a full survey of what other businesses that you were talking about, it's tough to say specifically what sets us apart. But you can tell that it's a women business enterprise, minority owned, local folks, not just sort of out of state interests. So that does and at the large, not necessarily with the specifics of the ones that you mentioned, does set UMA apart for the most part.
Have you done any research for the other local ones in the area? Are they big conglomerates from out of states, like you said?
I'm sure some of the Fitchburg ones I participated in citing, but I've been doing this for so many years now. I don't remember each individual one. I know that we're opening in Pepperell. That's going to be another semi-local one.
And just to add on what this guy said, when we approached Mr. Donnelly's a few months ago, we made a promise to him and his team that whatever service that he did for the town for last 30, 40 plus years, we would make a commitment to them. We would do a justice for their name at that site. What do I mean by that is, we are here to be a part of community, right? So we are healthcare, and talking about like previous questions, I was a trained cardiologist in New York City, and I have seen younger kids coming in to the hospital with a cardiac arrest. They come to the hospital to get cool so that their brain gets 48 hours of time for it to heal. And when the parents ask, what could we have done, like something that that just strains our eyes, that wish we could have done something for that kid from opioid addiction. So this is what the team is all about, to try to help educate to the people. As I said, that there is a stigma and taboo which is been associated with cannabis. What sets us apart is coming from a healthcare focused group, being a part of the community. We are here for the people, and maybe that would do justice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, I'm going to give you the last word and wrap it up, and then we'll call the meeting to close.
Well, thank you to the moderator and to Ms. Lemieux for hosting us tonight, and everyone who showed up, and thank you for the facility and the services and allowing us to put this on here. It certainly made it efficient and easy, and so far the town has been great to work with, so we really appreciate your time, truly.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank
Okay.
you very much.
It is about 5 minutes past 8, and declare the meeting to be concluded. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.